Hello again, everybody. This is Fish Wonk. My name is Zane, and I am your Fish Wonk. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about the thing that gives the intertidal its names, the tides themselves. Right now, we are in the midst of a special event that happens every now and again, the spring tide. Now, a spring tide occurs when you've got the sun and the moon such that they pull on the water from the same axis. So if this is the Earth and the moon goes around, that's really going to be what controls the tides for the most part. The sun is larger and more gravitationally massive, but so much further away that the moon is dominant in terms of that pull. However, it is not negligible. So when you have the sun here, the moon here, and the Earth here, all in a line, you would have a direct line pulling the tide up. If you had the sun here, the Earth here, and the moon here, contrary to what you might think, that would also have an identical effect. When you've got a tide on this side, which is the tidal bulge, you also have the same bulge on the other side due to the centrifugal forces. So when they're in line, it creates the spring tide. The reverse of that is the neap tide, when you have the moon and the sun perpendicular to each other when in relation to the Earth. That causes the bulge on this side to be somewhat canceled out by a smaller bulge on this side. And there you see very little variance between the high and the low tide. Now, the spring tide is where you will see the highest highs and the lowest lows. Over here, you can see on those rocks just how high the tide can get, where the water will typically cover. Of course, right now we are at the low tide, and that means that it is as low as it's going to get today. Given about 8 hours from now, the water will be almost up to my feet here. And you can see there's a stark difference behind me between the low tide and the high tide. This is, of course, the high tide for the day, which means this is as high as the water is going to get, roughly. Yesterday, I believe we were at about a negative 1.3. This is probably at about a 6.7. Which means that this is an 8-foot difference from yesterday, and you can see the difference it makes. Now, it's going to be different everywhere you go, because there's 3 main types of tides. The diurnal tide being you only have 1 high tide and 1 low tide during the day. Semi-diurnal is, of course, 2 of each during the day, both about the same height. But the mixed semi-diurnal, which is what we're experiencing here, is 2 high tides per day with 1 significantly lower than the other, and 2 low tides during the day with 1 significantly lower than the other. From being an entire field of tide pools to now being completely submerged, that is what the tides do.